Look, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about some very serious stuff, but I'm going to just come out of this book. It's called The Fourth Dimension, Sacred Geometry. But what I can say is that pretty much every person on earth they don't have it in them, what they've been given. What they've been given since birth will not allow them to see anything other than the impressions that they've had since birth. Impressions is like a newspaper article in the headlines. When a human being reads the headline, then it's impressing another individual's thoughts that created that newspaper and that headline to create thought within their mind, to create the human to never question anything and to have a certain drive. Their will and their character is developed into a materialistic realm that's been programmed to, if it can't be proven in the lab or by the numbers, and it's like it's ridiculous. But the impressions, printing press, the books, this is not who we are. And it's too big for you to understand that, because the printing press, it's printing. See, when you're not taught that letters represent spirit, represent the unseen, you don't have that. You don't have anything. It's just a letter. So when you can understand that that's who you are, that's who you're geared to be. There's no spirit in your life. You might see nature a little bit. You don't understand the in-depthness of how deep that this goes, because what I'm going to talk about is like inverted. What I mean by that is like a square. What you know of here, what you see is a square. This video's in reverse, but it's all right. So that would be a square. So on the other side, it's going to be this. It's going to look like that. Okay? Because let me just say this real quick. Real geometry has to do with geocentric, but it has to do with space and time. Crawley says in 777, and he ain't the only one, but there's the same length of distance in 1 minute and 1 yard. You understand what I'm saying? One you can't see, so that's the unseen. That's another dimension. And no human, which would be a goy, has that. You understand what I'm saying? So let me say this before I lose this. When you add a circle to that right there, what is that? Okay. That's going to be on pretty much in front of all the churches. Okay? Remember, we told you this has nothing to do with the unseen. With the seen, I mean. BMW's logo. You see that? So we have a BMW logo. Okay. Old church cathedrals. All right. You see that right there? That's what this is. That's what that is. Right there. Okay? The square represents when they got it started, you got 3 square meals a day. Town Square, New York Times Square, Times Square. You see what I mean? Time and space. A mathematics, it's Euclidean. I've told you a long time ago that they've pulled these beings, these mentally challenged spirits, from Saturn. Alright, so let me do this. I'm trying to think of how to. Alright, so there's Saturn. There's the sun. There's the moon. And then here's the earth. So remember, here's the waters. So as everything's separated, Saturn was the first to come out, and then the sun, and then the moon stage, and then the earth stage. And as we were being conjured by the true Elohim through these stages, certain beings got left behind. So we went from here to here. These Ahrimanic and Luciferic stayed here. So we went to here, so they stayed there, so they didn't get what we got here. Then we went to here, and some were still there, and some got to there, but we're here. You understand now how they're lagging behind? So they're, and off means retarded. That's what they are. And then when we get to Earth, they're still this stage of true evolution that you don't know anything about. So these beings have been brought into where we're at now and being controlled through AI, okay, which is Ahrimanic intelligence. But the square, these symbols have to do with the other side. So if these beings, square represents Saturn, okay, and half of these people don't even know that when they go to these churches, these Mother Circe, these harnessing soul centers, these beings that are in this world, their subconscious doesn't see these symbols, because you know why? Because that's what fucking controls them. You understand? Them walking under that every Sunday and never seeing it in society and BMW and everything else is their prison for the other side. They don't even know what they're fixing to get into when they cross over. So everything that they should know, they don't know, and it's going to be inverted. So they're going to gravitate towards what? Yeah, the wrong side. By design. All right. I'm going to read something. I'm going to keep this dip in. It says, and I ain't got time to explain the astral world and ether and all this, but it says in the astral world, urges and passions take on animal shapes. As long as a human being is in a physical body, the shape of the astral body conforms more or less to the human physical body. When the material body is gone, however, the animal nature of urges, desires, and passions is revealed in the forms they assume. So that's what we're saying. In the astral world, therefore, an individual is a reflection of his or her urges and passions. Because these astral beings can also make use of other bodies, it is dangerous to allow mediums to go into a trance without the presence of a clairvoyant who can ward off evil. In the physical world, the form of a lion expresses certain passions, while a tiger expresses other passions and a cat still others. It is interesting to realize that each animal form is an expression of each specific passion or urge. This is heaven. In the astral world, in Kamaloka as well, we approximate the nature of animals through our passions. This fact is the source of a common misunderstanding with regard to the doctrine of transmigration of souls taught by Egyptian and Indian priests and teachers of wisdom. This doctrine, which teaches that we should live in ways that do not cause us to incarnate as animals, does not apply to physical life, but only to higher life. It is intended only to encourage people to live their earthly lives in ways that will not require them to assume animal forms after death. For example, someone who cultivates the character of a cat during earthly life appears in the form of a cat in Kamaloka. To allow individuals to appear in human form in Kamaloka is the goal of the doctrine of transmigration of souls. Scholars who fail to understand the true teachings have only an absurd ideal of this doctrine. We saw that when we enter the astral realm of numbers, time, and morality, we are dealing with a complete mirror image of everything we customarily think and do here on the physical plane. We must acquire the habit of reading in reverse, a skill we will need when we enter the astral realm. Learning to read in reverse is easiest when we take up elementary mathematical ideas, and that was in the other lecture. In the discussions that follow, you'll become more and more familiar with the ideas. He says, and I'd like to begin, and I did what I did before this because some of it's not put together the way I put it together. But he says, namely, the ideal of a square. Picture a square as you are accustomed to seeing. This is what a square looks like in the physical world. Now I will draw a square as it looks in Devacon. You probably never heard of that. These are just, you have these words, whether it's in Christianity or whatever. It is impossible to draw this figure precisely, but I want to give you at least an idea of what a square would look like on the mental plane, which is something approximate to a cross. So you have that right there. And all these brands came after this author right here. But it's based on your geographical location and what numbers you're born under and everything. It's just how it is. You don't understand what I'm saying, because this is not him the same way that it's what's coming through this man. It was straight fire. It's no different than whatever somebody created that got 7 Grammys. Okay, this teaches you about real fucking shit. Those sitting in front of a TV and getting emotions in you is black fucking magic. So that's spirit and this is spirit. So anybody that wants to fucking deny that, them, their family, their children sit in front of a TV and channel black magic sorcery into their soul every night, every day, scrolling and all that shit. And they'll take up for it. They'll run from this because they are in a prison within their subconscious. It says its main features are 2 intersecting perpendicular axes, or if you will, 2 lines that cross each other. The physical counterpart is constructed by drawing lines perpendicular to each of these axes. The physical counterpart of a mental square can best be imagined as a stoppage in 2 intersecting streams. Let's imagine these perpendicular axes as streams or forces working outward from their point of intersection, with counter tendencies working in from the opposite direction from the outside inward. A square arises in the physical world when we imagine that these 2 types of streams or forces, one coming from within and one coming from without, meet and hold each other at bay. Boundaries develop where a stoppage occurs in the streams of force. So, here. This image describes how everything on the mental plane relates to everything on the physical plane. You can construct a mental counterpart of any physical object in the same way. I should have started at the beginning, but I'm not worried about it. But he gets in with it. It gets into this. This is my whole point. The square goes into the cube. It says, now instead of the square, imagine a cube. A cube is very similar to a square. A cube is a figure bounded by 6 squares. Mr. So-and-so has made an extra model showing the 6 squares right here. that delineate a cube. Instead of the 4 boundary lines in a square, imagine 6 surfaces forming the boundaries. Imagine that the boundary of the stopped forces consists of perpendicular surfaces instead of perpendicular lines, and assume that you have 3 instead of 2 perpendicular axes. You have just defined a cube. At this point, you probably can imagine a cubes correlate on the mental level. Again, we have 2 figures that complement each other. A cube has 3 perpendicular axes and 3 different directions to its surfaces. We must imagine that stoppage occurs in these 3 surface directions. The 3 directions of the axes and the 6 surfaces, like the square has 2 axes and 4 lines, can be imagined only as opposites of a particular sort. Anyone who thinks about this subject, hang on. Oh, it gets into some deep shit. But I ain't getting into that because I don't know. I can't understand that shit. Hang on. Oh, the Darwinian theory and all that. Hang on. I'm trying to make sure. I already read that. Because it gets into hardcore, like, it's crazy. I was wanting to read the part, just one part where he tells you that the average human being now, I'm sorry. This is basically what it is when we're in a prison within our subconscious, okay? And a cube can only see 3 sides, all right? And that's the whole thing with the square. These human beings cannot see anything other than what they've only ever known. So, you know, it talks about this. Let's visualize again how the dimensions are built up. A point is 0-dimensional. A line is 1-dimensional. A surface 2-dimensional. And a solid object is 3-dimensional. Thus, a cube has 3 dimensions: height, width, and depth. How do spatial figures of different dimensions relate to one another? Imagine being a straight line. You have only 1 dimension and can move only along a line. If such one-dimensional beings existed, what would their ideal of space be? They would not be able to perceive their own dimensionality. Wherever they went, they would be able to imagine only points, because points are all we can draw while remaining within a straight line. A 2-dimensional being would encounter only lines. That is, it would perceive only 1-dimensional beings. A 3-dimensional being, such as a cube, would perceive 2-dimensional beings, but not its own 3 dimensions. My bad. Human beings, however, can perceive their own 3 dimensions. If we draw the correct conclusion, we must realize that if a 1-dimensional being can perceive only points, a 2-dimensional being only straight lines, and a 3-dimensional being only surfaces, a being who perceives 3 dimensions must be 4-dimensional. The fact that we can delineate external beings in 3 dimensions and manipulate 3-dimensional spaces means that we ourselves must be 4-dimensional. Just as a cube would be able to perceive only 2 dimensions and not its own 3rd dimension, it is clear that we cannot perceive the 4th dimension in which we ourselves live. Thus, you see, the human beings must be 4-dimensional beings. We float in the sea of the 4th dimension like ice and water. Let's return to our discussion of mirror images. This vertical line represents a cross-section formed by a mirror. Reflects an image of the figure on the left side. The reflection process points beyond the 2nd dimension into 3rd in order to understand the direct, uninterrupted relationship of the mirror image of the original blah, blah, blah. anyways, I just wanted to read some of that. Damn, I didn't want that to take too long, but it did. But this right here, if you want to get that book, get it, because it, look, I'll show you some of them. There you go. Here's a screenshot of that. This is just something small, but I mean, he's showing you different. This is, and you're not going to get, it's all has to do with that up there. And it has to do with what you're in. But listen, these structures with these symbols on them, they're like a power station for souls. That's what I'm saying. The word church goes into Circe. Circe goes into Kirke, which is Kirke or Kirk, like Charlie Kirk Cameron. You know, Costco has Kirk. Look, that's what I'm saying. It's Circe. Costco's brand name label.
Kirkland Signature House.
Kirkland.
According to Wikipedia, U.S. Costco's worldwide headquarters are in Issaquah, Washington, an eastern suburb of Seattle, although its Kirkland Signature House label bears the name of its former location.
Signature. Hang on, let me finish up with this. Alright. We got Israel Regarde, Golden Dawn. Alright. The definition of sigil, however you want to pronounce it. Alright. A seal, a sign, or signature. A symbol used to represent a spiritual force, such as an angel, archangel, or a divine name of God. Any name or word can be made into a sigil. So let's go back over here. All right. CIRCE. So you can go Google that right now. Let's see. Right there it is. Circe. Also spelled Kirke, Kirke. So right there's their name brand, their signature. So from this magical book, it's saying it's a force. So it's black magic. So powerful sorceress and goddess in Greek mythology with an exceptional talent for mixing drugs, which is the pharmacies. She was the daughter of the sun god Helios and whatever. I don't want to get into all that because you can really learn a lot. So Circe. Okay, so what would the med industry be? It would be an enterprise. Right. So pharmakia is another word for sorcery. Yeah. So that's our whole thing. And then when you look at Star Trek, what's his name? He was in charge of the Enterprise. Captain Kirk. So it's Captain Circe right there. Signature force. Look, check this out. I'm going to show you the black magic. The Patriot Act. Let's see. Hang on. Wikipedia. Hang on. Wherever it says Wherever it says, it'll say that George Bush or whoever signed it into force. There it is. So the Patriot Act, where they can come in your house, right there is where it says it. Signed. Signed. So the force signed into law by Black Magic Magician Bush on October 26, 01. So signed, forced into the satanic black magic law. That's the big boy. And the Vatican would be the enterprise of the church of Kirky. See, the Vatican is Kirky, Cersei. And so is the fucking meds and all that. And there's the black magic signed right here. I just go back and turn it reverse. It's right there. We're giving all of it to you, like what they're doing. Nobody will listen to you because they're these little Arimons. I'm telling you. He'll tell you all about it. Steiner will tell you all about that shit. And see, they've left all that out there. So people like us that see it, they'll just sit there and observe you because they learn from us. People who wake up out of this shit, what they've literally done, and it is, listen, you don't have a clue of how the web of deception is. It's crazy. You know, and I mean, it just, all this stuff takes time. But I mean, it's, you know, and it tells you in these books what utensils is for white magic or black magic, or, you know, you got to really get some shit on the black magic, but you're not going to get too much. But it's too deep, man. Look, it's all made up, every fucking bit of it. But I mean, it's some real stuff about them. You know, they're brought into this world to be uploaded with so many forces of materialism, and then to go to the other side, and then all their passions and desires just become demons, and then that energy is all one, and these sons of bitches have harnessed it. Souls. They are soul stations. There's no spirit in any one of them. The soul already belongs to the system. There's no spirit in shots. They depend on that shot. And whatever the fucking head of the church, which is the snake, tells that con of an aggregate, that congregation, an aggregate of a con. That's a true piracy of a conspiracy. Yeah, of black magic. And that's what I'm saying. If you can see it, you're very fucking special because you're out of it. And they don't want nobody out of it. I can tell you that. Even the ones that they control don't have a clue. They got their soul too. They got every one of them. Nobody gets away. I love you. Hell yeah.